Hello and welcome back to Brewology. I'm Sarah and today we're making banana bread. Today's banana bread comes from Miss Joanna Gaines' very first Magnolia Table cookbook. It's on page 69. And I do make a few modifications, but this is my favorite banana bread that I've ever made. So first off, what's going in it? I've got my KitchenAid mixer, but whatever mixer you have, or you could even mix by hand if you wanted to. It's really soft. The first thing I do is I put in my 4 bananas. I'm actually also making sourdough bread, but I'm not filming that today because my process is probably more chaotic than anybody wants to see. But if anybody wants to see it, let me know. Maybe I'll take a day and show you. Now that the bananas are in, we're gonna just start rapid firing. I prepped all my ingredients ahead of time so I wouldn't bore you. But here is the 1 cup of packed light brown sugar, 1 3/4 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Spilled a little of my salt, that's awesome. And then 2 eggs. And I actually make my own vanilla, so it calls for 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. But I love vanilla, so anytime I bake with vanilla, I actually always over pour a full tablespoon of it. I know that everybody makes their own vanilla these days, but if anybody wants me to show you how I make it, I'll show you. And a lot of baking recipes will tell you, oh, mix the dry ingredients and then the wet ingredients and then mix them all together. I don't believe in that. I believe in chaos baking. There are not enough hours in the day or dishes in my home for me to be mixing the dry ingredients separate from the wet ingredients. However, that does remind me that I forgot one ingredient for you, which is the butter I had sitting over here on the stove melting. It's supposed to be fully melted when you put it in. Mine is not fully melted, but at least if I sit it on the stove to melt, I do not have to put it in the microwave. So now I'm going to mix all these together. On a medium speed. Now this recipe does say that you could optionally put in 1/2 cup of chopped pecans, but I do not love nuts in my pastries, so I am not going to do that, but you can if you'd like to. Next, I'm going to take my cooking spray and spray an 8x8 pan. And then a little trick my grandpa taught me is to take a towel and to just wipe it down all the sides. That way you don't have too much oil in your pan. Take my spatula and pour it in my 8x8 pan. Spread it all around so it's nice and even in the pan. And last but not least, this is what I think makes this recipe one of the best banana breads I've ever had. But you take some granulated sugar and you sprinkle it all across the top. When it comes out of the oven, it makes just the most gorgeous flavor and crunchy texture when you bite into it. It's so good. I am obviously giving myself a healthy helping, but it does say to use 2 tablespoons, 1 to 2 tablespoons, which I'm sure I do more of than that because I'm not counting. now I'm gonna throw it in the oven at 350 for 45 minutes, and then I'll come back and show you. While we're waiting for the banana bread to bake, I thought I'd actually, I do this every time I get out my baking supplies, but in my brown sugar, I always put in one of these brown sugar savers. I got mine from a local farmer's market, but it's just a piece of terracotta that you soak in water for 15 minutes, and then you put it in your brown sugar bag, and it keeps your brown sugar soft, which I have a lot of difficulty with it often drying out, probably because I live in Utah and it's an incredibly dry climate. So if you don't live here, maybe you don't need it. But I think it's super handy. I'm guessing most of you have already heard of it and already have one, but in case you don't, I wanted to throw that in there for you as well. Okay, now for the taste test.
All right. So good.